There was a midweek match that took place just last night. We had the Washington Spirit versus Portland Thorns at Segra Field. We both chose a draw in this one, Lisa. And we were so close. You could almost taste it. I think that's how I felt when I was watching this a little bit. But the Thorns were not to be denied. 2-1 victory for Portland on the road. Tell me your thoughts on this match.
This game was nuts. The first thought that comes to mind is just absolute nuts, chaos. There was lightning in the DC area in Leesburg, Virginia, where Segra Field is. So this game automatically was off to a slow start. Fans couldn't enter the stadium. The players' warm-up was askew from the start and thrown off because of the lightning in the area. And then after Portland announced their starting lineup, it was then announced that Sophia Smith would be taken out of that starting lineup and Marissa Everett would replace her. Smith not even available throughout this match after that point. So there were so many things that happened even before the whistle blew, Sandra, that I was like, ooh, this is just nuts. NWSL after dark, midweek nuts action. And this game gave a lot of everything. It was back and forth. We saw a lot of good soccer. Frankly, we saw Washington Spirit controlling a lot of the ball towards the beginning half of this game. We saw really great things, I think, from players like Rodman, Hatch getting 90 minutes after only playing 45 last week on the weekend. That was something we had talked about in our preview. How many minutes would Hatch get? Tara McKeown up top. There was lots of moving parts for both of these sides. And ultimately, the goals didn't start coming until after the 75th minute. And it was chaos ensued. And the way that Washington was able to get on the board first was an own goal by Bella Bigsby, Portland Thorns goalkeeper. She ends up making a great save off the line. Then she ends up catching the ball on a corner kick where there was so much pressure from Washington. She catches the ball and she ends up backpedaling just to give herself some space, not understanding her awareness on the pitch and goes right into the goal. She tries to throw it out. Hatch ends up at the insurance kick to find the back of the net, but it turns out to be an own goal. And that was something that I was like, wow, Washington just scored on an own goal after putting so much pressure on, like defensively, Aubrey Kingsbury had 4 saves. Bella Bigsby, 7 saves throughout this match. But Portland would come back, score 2 goals. Christine Sinclair getting the first one in the 84th minute. And she was hype after that goal. It was almost like a rock around, get it past Kingsbury and just find the back of the net. And then 92nd minute, so 2 minutes into the stoppage time, Morgan Weaver, beautiful shot. She's got a lot of space. She dribbles centrally and just rips it past Kingsbury, who's fully outstretched and can't save it. But this game had everything, and there was so much chaos. And if you just look at the last 15 minutes, that's not even it, because the chaos started at 7:00 before the game was even supposed to kick off up until the time that the first whistle blew.
Impressive. Portland scored all the goals in this match. I couldn't believe what we saw kind of like unfold there with that own goal. Initially, it was just, I guess, the epitome of chaos, quite frankly. But it also sort of felt like, hey, maybe this is the type of break that this Washington Spirit could use or need at this moment. They've been on a winless streak for a very long time now. And maybe they needed something as wild and ridiculous as that to sort of happen and maybe shake things up a little bit. But as far as midweek games go, I enjoyed this one. I think sometimes they could definitely feel a little bit clogged, a little bit of a grind. And I know that in the preview, we chatted a little bit about this one being hosted by the Spirit at Segra Field and how tough of a pitch that is to play on. But again, I think one of the things that we were talking about also in the preview is just like the complete differences of, within the standings between these two teams in terms of their momentum at the moment. You've got a Spirit team that are fighting for every single point that they can get right now at this stage of the season. And you've got a Portland Thorns side that are on just incredible form right now, on a remarkable run. I believe they have now extended their undefeated streak to double digits. I believe it's 11 at this point. That is That is outstanding when you're
Yeah.
talking about like streaks, as far as streaks can go in this league. That is ridiculous. So watching them kind of put together this kind of late game run on the road, just I think is another check of the many boxes of this Portland Thorns team that makes them kind of scary to go up against right now. But while we're talking about this game and teams in the bottom half of the table, and we talk a lot about Gotham right now with their breaking news, but with the Spirit, a little bit of a different energy. I mean, we talked about Gotham, off of their game, and I'm just like, I'm not seeing it. Like the body language is also equally bad on the pitch. It's just not there. And then you see this Spirit side. Like I thought Trinity Rodman had an incredible game last night. She was everywhere. And just sort of continuing to show that she's like not like in any kind of sophomore slump whatsoever, and putting together these really strong performances and also like on really quick turnarounds, so again, it's just I would imagine there's a layer of frustration there for the Spirit to not be able to find the breakthrough and get these wins, especially as their season is winding down rapidly. More than some other teams, they don't necessarily have those games in hand right now. These losses will tend to weigh heavier because of that.
Yeah, and looking at some of the numbers, you mentioned Portland's undefeated streak right now. They haven't suffered a road loss this season yet in 2022, which I think is incredibly impressive. And on the flip side of that, Washington Spirit is on a 15-game winless streak right now, which is tied for second in the NWSL for the longest winless streaks. And we talked about the numbers with Gotham. I'm going to bring them up again because they play a role in this. It's 22-game season for all of these teams, and Washington Spirit has played 16 games up until this point, last night being their 16th. And the Spirit has 12 points on this year. With 6 games left, if they win all 6 of these games, they will get 18 points, 30 points total. That's against 2 matches against Houston, San Diego, Gotham, Angel City, and Kansas City. Washington has to win out all 6 of those games. When you look at some of the other teams that are in the standings, OL Reign right now is at number 6 at the bottom of that playoff line with 21 points, and they've played 15 games. So if they win their next 3, they're at 30 points, and Washington is out. Angel City, they need 4 wins to get to 30 points, depending on where they are in the standings right now. So
and they're going to have more games to try to do that.
Washington needs to win out from here on out in order to get into the playoffs. And that's an incredibly big ask from this team. Is it possible?
Mathematically, of course. Hypothetically, not looking good. Doesn't feel good, I think, if you're on the Washington Spirit side of things. Quite frankly, I mean, you've been going this long in terms of, a winless streak for as long as you've been going. It's hard to turn that around at this point. And then B, it's hard to turn it around and then say, okay, we'll just go on a 6-game win streak now and it'll be fine.
Sure.
It's tough. Yeah.
Super tough to do. And they're traveling. It's a really tall task, but hey, we don't see Washington again until the 27th. They've got 2 weeks of a bye week. So maybe that'll be the ticket that they need.
Maybe we'll have to revisit them in a couple of weeks. Portland also not going to be playing this weekend, but there are going to be a number of teams setting up for action across this NWSL weekend slate of games. And we're going to be back with a preview of all those matches right after a quick break.